We are here to face the truth about ourselves, about this faith we love, and the ways it presently serves others and the world, as well as to open ourselves to ways it can better and more joyfully reflect our potential and core values. We want to know the ways we are bound to one another, as well as to our larger religious movements, normally beyond our sight and vision. We say we are open and diverse, yet it is too easy to feel stuck in old paths and stubborn habits, reflecting not so much our tradition as our comfort. We want to answer the call of service to a world that needs our message, our hope, our revived energy. We are gathered to learn, to unlearn, to hear, and to move forward. With these words of Stephen Kendrick, we begin. Welcome to our online worship for November 8th, 2020, and our theme for today of gratitude in times of uncertainty.
Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I am Gina O'Connor, your worship associate for today's service. We gather together with our doubts as well as our convictions, with our fears and our hopes, with our failures and our aspirations, with our sorrows and our joys. Whether you are joining us today for the first time or you've been a member or friend for many years, we are glad you are here. Whatever faith you have known, if any, whatever your background, whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. Now, as John O'Connor comes forward, let us say together from our homes the words for lighting our chalice. In the light of the truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, to share. I invite you to join me as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help our neighbor. To these ends, we covenant one with another.
I invite you now to join with me in a pause for silence, as we have done since the beginning of March earlier this year. We pause to hold in our hearts all of the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the way that they are influencing our lives, the lives of our communities, and the nation and world. In addition, today, on this important day, we pause to also hold in our hearts the deep polarization and division within our nation as we anticipate the results of a national election and all the work that we have to move forward together. Please join me in the silence. May compassion and courage and faith in the best of ourselves help us to move forward from this day. Our words of meditation are by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Gordon McKeeman, sometimes referred to by his nickname, Bucky. How does one address a mystery? Cautiously. Let us go cautiously then to the end of our certainty, to the boundary of all we know, to the rim of uncertainty, to the perimeter of the unknown which surrounds us. Let us go reverently. Let us go with a sense of awe, a feeling of approaching the powerful holy whose lightning slashes the sky, whose persistence splits concrete with green sprouts, whose miracles are present in every place and moment. Let us address the mystery hopefully, out of our need for wholeness in our own lives, the reconciliation of mind and heart, the conjunction of reason and passion, the intersection of the timeless with time. Let us approach the mystery quietly, for no words will explain the inarticulate or summon the presence that is always present even in our absence. What shall I say? Anything, any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request, any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself, or perhaps nothing. No complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. How do we approach the mystery? Simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. And at the end, say, Amen. The words for reflection that are chosen today are two brief readings that Gina will share with you. The first is by the Christian mystic and social activist Thomas Merton, and the second by the Unitarian Universalist minister Rebecca Parker, who also served as the president of the Star King School for the Ministry, which I attended.
We are living in the greatest revolution in history. a huge, spontaneous upheaval of the entire human race, not a revolution planned and carried out by any particular party, race, or nation, but a deep, elemental boiling over of all the inner contradictions that have ever been, a revelation of the chaotic forces inside everybody. This is not something we have chosen, nor is it something we are free to avoid. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts?
In addition to being related to our worship and covenant group theme for November, I wanted to talk with you today about gratitude in times of uncertainty, because the practice of gratitude can truly help to center and ground us, especially in these uncertain times. And to say we are living in uncertain times may be an understatement these days. Between the COVID-19 pandemic and one of the most polarized national elections in American history, the whole world feels topsy-turvy. Which way are we going? Are things getting better or worse? We have been anxiously awaiting these past months for a national election amidst the coronavirus restrictions. And now we are anxiously awaiting the results and consequences of the national election. Of course, We are also anxious about these winter months bringing an increase in COVID cases and with worries over potential changes in access to health care. And with all the extreme weather disturbances causing natural disasters, we're anxious too over what the winter weather may bring in terms of its impacts on our communities. And at the same time, many of us are facing the depressing reality that we will not be able to celebrate the winter holidays as we usually would, reuniting with family and friends over the physical distances between us. And as if these big worries weren't enough, we anxiously await to see how our economy will move forward in light of the pandemic impacts. While many of us are adapting for the most part to these restrictions, a large portion of our country are suffering devastating blows to our family stability during these holiday months. All of these stresses combine and have led to an increase in mental health issues, addiction, and domestic violence. So without a doubt, these are indeed anxious and uncertain times. Some people are suggesting that they represent an existential crisis, a time when more people than usual are wrestling with questions like, who are we? Where do we stand? What is keeping us together? Who are we as a nation? Well, it has become increasingly apparent that we are living in a time when the nation is deeply polarized, or perhaps it has been there all along and it's only become more visible to us. It's not just a major divide in beliefs, but in core values in terms of political leanings. America's founders could not have imagined what kind of nation we have become with its rich diversity, but their vision in creating institutions to help us create and maintain a democratic model of self-governance was ingenious in many ways. Yet, our democratic institutions are facing unprecedented challenges under the weight and competing claims of our American diversity. Whether it's polarization or even the factionalism within our polarization, many of us are gravely concerned. What is keeping us together? One unprecedented challenge we currently face in America is the validity of our democratic elections as being questioned at the highest level. Not only does that reveal a deep level of mistrust in the institution of democratic elections, but a deep mistrust of the thousands upon thousands of everyday people from all political parties who participate in the working of our polls. Sure, we are human, and occasional mistakes will be made, and there are always a few who have malicious intent, but does that mean that our elections are invalid? Another unprecedented challenge is the politicizing of the U.S. Postal Service, which is particularly sad during the COVID-19 pandemic when so many people whose health are at risk would be disenfranchised if the only way they could vote was at the polls and in person. Another unprecedented challenge to American democracy in these uncertain times is that the free press as a check on political power is being deeply questioned over a diminished relevance of facts and even of science. This is not only a challenge for the survival of American democracy, it is a question of human survival under the fatal threat of the COVID-19 virus. With these steep odds stacked against American democracy at the moment, what can we still be grateful for in spite of these unprecedented challenges? I've thought of a few, and I invite you to reflect upon your own observations and insights in this month when we are lifting up a practice of gratitude as part of our faith as Unitarian Universalists. I can think of 3 things right off the top of my head that we can be deeply grateful for in these uncertain times surrounding the national election and the pandemic. One is that we did indeed make a greater use of mail-in ballots. Not only did that make it possible, not only did that make voting possible, we can be deeply grateful that the highest record-breaking turnout of voters that we've ever seen before in our history was made possible by the mail-in ballots and in spite of the pandemic. We can also be grateful that the wide use of mail-in ballots not only demonstrated a greater engagement in the fundamental voting right in democracy, these mail-in ballots protected the health of millions of people by not having to show up at the public polling places. What else can we be grateful for? I urge you not to forget or overlook the thousands upon thousands of state poll workers and precinct officials. Not only did they face the daunting task of providing the safest environment that they could for voters and themselves, many states who were not able to count the mail-in ballots as they were received have had the monumental and arduous task of properly processing a huge number of votes, as we all well now know. These poll workers and officials did so even after an invitation to threats of intimidation at the polls made from the highest level of government. Uncertain times, indeed. As Unitarian Universalists living in these uncertain times, what can we do not only to manage our anxieties and protect our health, but to take a stand for our values? The practice of gratitude can help us on all counts. For example, we can take a personal 30-day practice of gratitude by naming and writing down our daily gratitudes and put them into a gratitude jar or into a journal. Beyond that, we can share our gratitudes with each other, especially as we're likely to be separated from some of our family and friends during these upcoming holidays. We can still make a point to share our gratitudes with the people who matter most to us in our lives. As Unitarian Universalists, we can also be grateful for our faith tradition and its principles as a guiding light for living in these uncertain times. Like democracy, our UU faith is designed to be a large umbrella for people with differing backgrounds and beliefs. We also struggle with how much diversity we can support without falling into factionalism. But our UU principles can come in handy as we strive to live up to our highest aspirations, especially under difficult conditions. So, for example, as we struggle with being Unitarian and Universalist and American in these troubling and uncertain times, we can ask ourselves and each other, are we living up to the principle that every person has inherent worth and dignity? Do we demonstrate this sacred value in word and in deed? We can also ask ourselves and each other, are we living up to the principle of respect for the right of conscience granted to all? This fundamental UU and democratic value supports the notion that we are each entitled to our own beliefs under the dictates of our own conscience as we know it. Another principle we are aspiring to live up to as Unitarian Universalists and Americans is the use of democratic process, not just in our congregations, but also in society at large. We are protectors of the democratic process and the right to dissent, preferably peaceably. Are we doing all we can as Unitarian Universalists to help bridge the political divide in our country? Perhaps our experience with diverse beliefs within our own faith communities can help equip us to meet on common ground, even with those who hold very different values than ours as fellow Americans. This is a challenge for us in the weeks and months ahead. As we lift up our personal gratitudes and our shared gratitude for our faith of Unitarian Universalism and its principles, I want to share with you a phrase we often said together on a Sunday morning during services in the congregation I served in Pensacola before moving here. A longtime member, an older gentleman who struggled with Parkinson's disease that affected both his mobility and speech, named Bo Davison, would often make a slow way forward on a Sunday morning to share in joys and concerns. Bo's speech was often difficult to follow, and it took a lot of energy for him to express his point, but he always finished with the same refrain and invited us to join with him in saying, "It's a great day to be a Unitarian Universalist." Not only was Bo a longtime member of the congregation in Pensacola, he had been on the front lines of the civil rights movement in Mississippi and Alabama, and on the front lines for reproductive choice in Pensacola during the difficult years of violence at the women's clinics there. Bo was very proud not only of his UU identity, but his heritage of being a descendant of the British suffragette Emily Wilding Davison. She was a teacher and pursued higher education, even at a time when women were not granted academic degrees. She was a militant fighter for her cause of the women's vote, was arrested 9 times, and while on the combination of 7 hunger strikes, she was force-fed on 49 occasions. Her death, which occurred when she stepped in front of the King's horse during a race at the track in 1913, became a turning point for the militant suffragette movement in England. Now, this may seem like a random thought, but I invite you to pause in our practice of gratitude today, to remember everyone before us and in our time who have given their blood, sweat, and tears to the cause of the democratic process. We stand on their shoulders when we show up to honor the right and privilege to simply vote. As each of us moves through these turbulent and uncertain times, may a practice of daily gratitude help to keep us centered and grounded in our deepest values. May we draw upon the inspiration and shared strength of our Unitarian Universalist principles and our community as we navigate the way ahead. Perhaps even by joining in the refrain, "It's a great day to be a Unitarian Universalist." Amen.
Sometimes I'm right and I can be wrong, My own beliefs are in my songs. Butcher, the baker, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in.
But sometimes I'm right, and I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my song. The butcher, the banker, the drummer, and then it makes no difference what group I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people.
There is a blue one that can't accept the green one, for living with the fat one, trying to be a skinny one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby 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 Doo, sha sha. We got to live together.
I am no better, and neither are you. We are the same, whatever we do. You love me, you hate me, you know me, and then you still can't figure out the thing I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah.
There is a long way that doesn't like the short hair, for being such a rich one that will not help the poor one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby Doo, sha sha. We got to live together. There is a yellow one that won't accept the black one, that won't accept the red one, that won't accept the white one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. And Scooby Dooby Doo, sha sha. I am everyday people.
Our closing words are adapted today by Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs vision. Bring them with you and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving, your courage, your conviction. Bring your need for healing and your powers to heal. There is work to do, and we already have all that we need to do it.
As John O'Connor extinguishes the flame, let us say together from our homes the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. We hope you will consider making an offering after today's service through our webpage, uushenandoah.org, which allows us to exercise that generosity of spirit for this self-supporting church and its many ministries, which continue while we are not able to physically gather together. We invite you to join our church community at noon at our spiritual post-service gathering for Joys and Concerns, followed by our coffee hour conversations in smaller breakout groups. The Zoom link is found in your UUCSV email. Thank you for joining us today.
Once again, during these times of uncertainty, it's important for us to practice gratitude, to stay strong, stay safe, and as a parting note for today and for the coming weeks, I invite you to join with me in saying, "It's a great day to be a Unitarian Universalist." Thanks for being with us today.